My talk is about adventures with Talos at Equinix. It was Steve contacted me and asked me, "Can you do a talk?" And I said, "Sure, I will." And then he asked me a very difficult question: what will be the title of the talk? So effectively, he picked this title, and I thought it's a very good one. I'm Jorik. I work at Equinix. Equinix is a publicly traded company. We operate around 250 data centers worldwide. Those are commercial data centers in which other people stuff their computers. When I explain it to my mother-in-law, I always tell her it's a hotel for computers. We operate in 27 countries, 5 continents, and it's a $7 billion revenue annually. So that's Equinix. Please visit our website if you have questions about it. I don't know very much about Equinix because we do different stuff about which I'm going to tell more. Oh, it has died. So it should be working again. Excellent. Sorry for that. OBS quit unexpectedly. Well, so I work at Equinix, big company. We do data centers. But my business unit does different stuff about which I'd like to tell you a little bit more. But then first, a little bit about me. My name is Jorik. I work at Equinix. I'm a product owner of our DevOps team. I've been with the company since 2007. I've been messing around with open source software and Linux since, I believe, 2000. Playing with containers since 2015, privately and professionally. I've been contributing and using Talos since, I think, 2020, 2021. In my private life, I'm a father of 2 children. I like running. Sometimes I play a little bit on my keyboard, and that's me. So I told you I work for Equinix, and we do a little bit different stuff. I work for a business unit which got acquired by Equinix in 2008. My business unit was doing all kinds of managed services. We called it hosting back then. It meant managed service, physical service. It evolved into virtual infrastructure over the years. And nowadays we offer managed Kubernetes offerings as well. And that journey looked a little bit like this. In 2018, we launched a managed Kubernetes offering. We thought back then that Kubespray was a very good idea. But it changed over time. In 2019, Joost, who is in the audience, and me started playing around with something called Talos. It was version 0.3, I believe. It was very special because it was a total different experience. You could not log in into the nodes. When something broke, you needed to spin up privileged debug containers to inspect the nodes. It was all different than anything we saw before, but we got a feeling that what we had in hands was a very powerful toy in terms of declarative configuration, reduced attack surface. And what I forgot to tell you, those managed services like the virtual infrastructure and the managed Kubernetes offering, we offer those typically to enterprise customers who want more compliancy, more hardening, all kinds of security controls. Talos felt like something that fit very well in that picture. But because it was so different and it was very, very much in motion back then, we just looked at it and stuck to Kubespray. In 2020, we became fed up with a lot of stuff caused by Kubespray. Kubespray it's a great tool. I don't want to bash it, but if you have ever done a Kubernetes upgrade or a Kubespray upgrade using Kubespray, you'll notice that it takes a lot of time, and it's a very convoluted set of Ansible scripts. which are good at their job, but they're not very efficient. And in the end, you have a Kubernetes solution based on kubeadm running on basically Linux nodes, also doing Kubernetes. And the big difference with Talos was it only did Kubernetes, which was very okay for us. So we did an official proof of concept with Talos. It was 0.7 back then. I looked it up, all those numbers. And everybody was very enthusiastic. People liked it, but the big challenge is: are we able to operate this? Because it's very different from anything we've seen before. People operating these platforms are typically people with a background in Linux system administration, and those skills can hardly be used when you use Talos. It requires a different approach, different skills. So we thought about it and we did the proof of concept, but everybody liked it in the team, which led to a first release of our product based on Talos. So at that point, we had basically two product offerings, the one based on Talos and the one based on Kubespray. Not something the customers could choose between. It was, if new clusters needed to be provisioned for customers, they were Talos based. And we actively encouraged customers to migrate to Talos, but later more on that subject. And by last year, we did an end of support for our legacy offering, which means that all our supported instances at this moment are based on Talos. So that's basically our history. But let's go to my table of contents, which explains a little bit of the adventures we had. The first and main challenge we had is the big unknown. But let me go into a few questions first from the audience, because I think we have that time, and I'm not a very well-structured person, so I like questions in between. The question is, before adopting Talos, was kubeadm considered for cluster management? kubeadm is tolerable. Don't really understand that question, but Kubespray is using kubeadm. Kubespray is basically a huge set of Ansible playbooks, basically performing kubeadm on any operating system of your choosing. We chose CoreOS back then. We later migrated to Flatcar because of its reduced footprint. We did not know Talos was even more reduced. And I hope that answers John's question. So to the agenda, we had four flavors of adventure with Talos. So first of all was the unknown. Then we had some growing pains because we adopted quite a young product in what we thought a different application than maybe intended. We had some issues with compliancy, and we had huge issues with migration. Yeah, when I say issues, I should say adventures or challenges, but every issue is a nice adventure if you look at it in the right way. So the unknown, that's basically the trigger for Steve to ask me, can you tell me a little bit about this? Because he liked that story when I spoke to him last year at KubeCon Europe in Valencia. So we had a few team members tinkling at home with Talos. I was running Talos on a single board ARM computer. Joost was doing it on an old desktop, and we were very happy about it. But we felt we need to convince the team that Talos is the way, and we should take this turn. And every moment of every conversation about Talos involved questions about how are we going to debug it. It is so different. Are we able to support it in the long term? So it boiled down to it's different. People don't like different, and especially during outages. So we try to come up with a solution for that. Effectively, we work Scrum, so there is planned work. What we actually did is for each team member who did not have any experience with Talos, we scheduled a time box on the backlog, in which they could play with Talos, deploy Talos. We had someone with experience mess with the setup, create some outages, and had them fix it, sometimes assisted by the people who had experience, which led to a broader user experience in the usage of Talos, which eventually led to Talos being we eventually had a good confidence that we were able to support Talos. Well, then came a long process of adopting Talos or code base of it's dying again. Yay, I'm back again. Okay, this is not my definition of fun. Sorry for that. We had forced exposure by teammates in working with Talos, which led to the adoption. So our product consists of Kubernetes, which used to be managed by Kubespray. We had to de-weave Kubespray out of everything, weave Talos in, and which led to the release of our product, which was Talos based. And then we had two flavors of the product, the one with Kubespray and the one without. And it worked very well. Later on, we decided we need to kill support for Kubespray because supporting two flavors of a product means double testing, double pipelines for nightly testing of everything. So it's increased our engineering efforts a lot. So we put an end date on the support for our Kubespray based offering. Later more about that. Let me go into the different flavor of adventures, which are growing pains. Well, it started with it's a very specific problem we had when we adopted Talos. We noticed that a piece of our monitoring, you all know it probably, is the Prometheus node exporter. It was complaining about the system clock on Talos not being synced to NTP, which is very strange, because the logs were showing that there was a lot of NTP happening. There were clock jumps all the time. So we did not know what was happening. We dug into it. I think maybe even I did it personally. And we discovered that the NTP implementation of Talos was kind of okay, but could do with some improvement. I think Andre has improved it a lot over time, and it's working now, and Node Exporter is not complaining anymore. We had a lot of fun with VMware Cloud Director and what's called the OVF environment. If you deploy anything on anything VMware, or maybe on any platform like OpenStack or Amazon, you will have the possibility to pass configuration data to the guest. So if you deploy a VM, you can put in an envelope with metadata. In the case of Talos, Talos picks up this metadata and expect it to be Talos config and can bootstrap itself. Well, on VMware vSphere, which is well, there's vSphere and there's vCloud. vSphere is a method to cluster ESXi hosts, and vCloud Director is another abstraction layer on top of it, providing a portal to end users. And the way guest info is passed from vCloud is slightly different than how vSphere does it. And we did a lot of engineering to make sure you could deploy Talos on vCloud, passing Talos config through the OVF environment. We also did some work, I think, on the Terraform side, because we are using Terraform to do so. On Terraform needed a bit of a push as well in that direction. But in the end, we were able to deploy Talos on VMware Cloud Director using guest info passed, Talos config passes guest info. which was a big win. We really needed it to embrace this into our product. We had a lot of fun with DNS. We have these customers with all those high compliancy demands, and they typically have their own DNS server somewhere on-prem, serving private zones, etc. And they have their registry somewhere in their racks on-prem or whatever. And it doesn't always work through public DNS. So we needed custom kubelet DNS settings. It's the cluster DNS setting, which I believe tells the pods where they should be resolving. It was not in Talos before we were using it, so I think we raised issues, and Talos, the Sidero team, I think it was Talos Labs called back then, solved it perfectly. We had an adventure with the extra arcs of the API server. We wanted to change the admission plugins for the Kubernetes API server. And if you put the admission back then 0.7, when you put in the admission control plugins flag as an extra arc, it was added to the list of already existing arcs, which already contained that specific flag. So the way extra arcs were interfering with Talos defaults needed an overhaul for that, which was fun. We did not do any coding for that, which is good, I think, because it's a very complex thing, and coding is not our first competence. Yeah, and a major challenge was the lifecycle. We already had that a little bit with Kubernetes. Our product has a lifecycle. We release our product 3-4 times a year. KubeSpray had a lifecycle, but it was a little bit slower than ours, so that was not a problem. So sometimes we had a KubeSpray bump in our release, and sometimes we didn't. Talos had a much shorter life cycle. So officially it's not supported to skip Talos versions when you upgrade. So we needed to engineer something in our side that we were able to jump between 2 Talos versions between one release of our product, which took a little bit of puzzling on our side, but our automation has become much beautiful because of all of these problems, which eventually led to a beautiful product. Then there is this chapter about compliancy. We were using Kubebench to assess CIS hardening for everything container related. And what you see here on this slide, except the fact that this is the beautiful city of Enschede where I live, the part in the square is an excerpt from config from Kubebench, which tests that permissions on etc Kubernetes admin conf is what it should be, which of course doesn't work on Talos because that file is not present. The admin conf is only, I believe, used for kubeadm purposes, and Talos doesn't use kubeadm. So all these kinds of tests fail. That doesn't mean that we are not compliant with the CIS rule, which caused this test to exist. But yeah, it needed some rethinking. We have sent in a lot of patches to Kubebench, I believe, and we have a nice document explaining to customers why these things are false positives, which help in compliancy. We also, but I don't have pictures about it, we have some customers in the Dutch municipal governmental sphere, the gemeentes for people who speak Dutch. And they are tied to a standard which is called the Common Grounds Haven standard. The Common Grounds Havens is a standard for compliant hosting for Dutch municipalities if it's in the cloud. And the test suite to assess if your platform is compliant with that standard, yeah, it had all these kinds of tests. It was checking file permissions, etc. It was assuming it was running on top of either OpenShift or it was Amazon. So we did a pull request with the authors of it was actually a merge request. It's hosted on GitLab with the authors of Common Ground Haven. which are very glad to accept this our contribution, which make Talos an accepted platform for Dutch municipalities. Oh, it's back again. And I should be back again. It's very interesting how this is not working at all. Yeah, but it works. So we sent in a contribution to a tool that assesses the readiness of your platform to be used for hosting on Dutch municipalities, which makes Talos an official platform on which web applications can land for Dutch municipalities. I must confess, I don't know if there are any Dutch municipalities actually using this. We are maybe working on some deals, maybe not. I can't tell you anything about it. Yeah, it's according to standards and compliance, it should be possible. Yeah, Hugo, me too. It was a very unexpected side effect of using a restricted OS, that these kinds of test suites assume there's a whole host. We have had this category of issues with certain cloud storage providers as well. If you use NetApp Trident, for instance, it's an integration between NetApp hardware and containers, or maybe only Kubernetes in general. It assumes all kinds of tools on the host as well. It's basically not usable on Talos at this point, which is very sad. Any questions so far? Because besides all the restarts of my OBS, I'm running through my slides quicker than I expected. The outages we manufactured. Oh, it's long ago. I think I personally was the champion in splitting etcd. That's something I'm very good at. I still do that sometimes. So we messed around with that. We threw away nodes, reset those. Yeah, basically stuff with network traffic not happening. That was the cease. At the moment we introduced Talos, we also shifted from Calico to Cilium. Yeah, Lucas is a co-worker. We broke core DNS. That's one of the things we did. We also broke stuff in Cilium because we had the same challenge with Cilium. People were using Calico for a lot of things. Calico relies on IP tables, so it's kind of traceable what's happening. When you shift from Calico to Cilium, everything happens in eBPF, which is less straightforward to debug if stuff doesn't work. So, and we switched from Calico to Cilium for various reasons. We had a couple of customers who had network policies. We put network policies for them in place to make their public cloud registries, such as in Azure, accessible. When you do that on Calico, at least back then, which was IP tables based back then, you had to hard code the IP addresses and egress traffic policies. And as Cilium is based on eBPF, you can do fancy tricks like use FQDNs in your policies. Under the hood, it will install a DNS proxy, which listens for DNS queries, remembers the IP addresses, and updates lists under the hood. But effectively, we were able to service those customers with an FQDN because the registries on Azure change IP address every day or hour or second, or it moves a lot. So that was the main trigger. And also the promise of Cilium was that it was much more performant. It may be true, we haven't noticed huge performance gains, but then again, it's not very high traffic what our customers do. So it may have saved some performance, maybe not. Ollie's question is how we bootstrap the Kubernetes clusters nodes. Well, we want to use the cluster API provider for VMware Cloud Director, but it's not very mature at the moment. We evaluate that every half year in the hopes that it will become mature enough to use. Until then, we use a lot of automation, but at the point where it interacts with Talos, we use Terraform to deploy the VMs on vCloud, and Terraform puts in the Talos config into the OVF guest info. And yeah, that makes basically the node self-bootstrapping. We generate the Talos config a bit with Talos commands and a bit with our own automation templating. Manfred's question, what are you doing with Cilium? Yeah, we use it as a CNI inside the cluster. We don't use BGP outside the clusters. John, no, Talos, yeah, sometimes. In 99% of the cases, we run Talos on VMware, and our interface to VMware is VMware Cloud Director, which is the interface of our virtualization offering. Okay, I'll go to my last chapter then, and then I've got time for more questions. Then the migration chapter. When we were ready to end of service our kubeadm product, there was no real option to glue kubeadm nodes to Talos clusters or the other way around. So basically, there was no real option to migrate from our kubespray offering to Talos. We've tried a lot of things. There is kubemove, there is Velero, which you can make backup and restores, and all of those things kind of work. But if you don't have control over your workload, and as a service provider, you don't, people can put anything in your clusters. It was very tricky to do a 100% migration because sometimes people were relying on service accounts which were provisioned by kubespray, maybe by a very old version of kubespray, which has been upgraded many times. So it was very hard to deterministically migrate customers from our kubespray-based offering to Talos. Our own clusters, because internally we use Kubernetes for a lot of things as well. It was much easier because we provisioned those with CI/CD. So we just point the CI/CD to a different cluster, and it will spit out the right stuff in the right clusters, more or less. Of course, there's always a bit of engineering. It never works so beautifully like I just explained it, but that was basically it. And a lot of our customers have filled their clusters by hand. So it was basically a situation where we told them, okay, you are on an old version of our infrastructure. We give you a lot of time, but we have to end support for this version of our product. We have got a better version over there, which has a couple of benefits because there was Cilium, which helped a lot of customers with the FQDN policies. There's much more visibility with Cilium, we believe. So there were a couple of benefits. On the background, there was also for a group of customers of ours, another migration going on, which required a lot of reinstalls as well. So basically, we ended support for their old clusters. We delivered them new clusters in parallel, and we gave them a lot of grace time to migrate their workloads. And that actually went very well. I expected a lot of contract negotiations, people who were going to leave us, but didn't happen at all. Business grew even. So I think you can conclude that they were happy with Talos. We still have a couple of kubespray-based clusters running around. There are always some customers who are laggards, who are not able to put priority. So the nice thing is that it tells me that it crashed. It would be really funny if it didn't tell me. So I'm back again. Can anyone confirm that? Yeah, super. So there are always a couple of customers who are not, they all are willing to migrate, but they aren't always able to migrate. Sometimes there are budget things that they need to focus on the new software version, which makes it impossible for them to migrate. But eventually they will, and I think in a couple of months before summer we can say goodbye to KubeSpray. From a support point of view, we already said goodbye more than a year ago. It has been erased from our code base. It isn't there anymore. We are not able to solve problems on old KubeSpray-based clusters anymore. So effectively, it's gone now, but there's still always a little bit of legacy chasing you. And that was, I think, the end of my presentation, which makes me
that's perfect timing.
What you wanted to know.
We've got about 2 minutes for questions before we get the next Nokia talk. Have you documented your transition somewhere to Talos publicly? That was a question.
No, we haven't. It's a bit tricky. We are a huge American company, publicly traded, so anything with our name or logo on it is officially needs to go through departments way above or besides my pay grade. So it's very hard to block and do that kind of stuff because it may impact shareholder value, etc., etc. So no, don't like it. I would really love to endorse Talos in these kinds of blog posts, but we have to do it illegally. Or when I ask, the answer is always no.
Yeah. So
but I have put ourselves into adopters.md. So.
How many Talos clusters do you have running now?
Yeah, I can't really comment on that. It's anything between 0 and 250.
Fair enough.
I can tell you privately, though, but I can't do it on public television.
Sure. Of the migration tools you mentioned, which one proved to do the job most reliably?
Yeah, well, none of them. I'd say if you want to use tools, use Velero. It's very flexible and you can transform your resources. So if you have control over your workload, I would say use your CI/CD and don't use any migration tools. That would be my first option. If you are not able to do so, Velero.
Yeah, we do have, as Andrew mentioned, we do now have documented migration. Yeah. But that didn't exist when you were starting down.
No, it was 0.9, I think, when we did this.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was awesome, Yorick. I'm going to leave this session and go join over in the Nokia session, but you're welcome to stay if people still have questions. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I'm going to stick around for a couple of minutes. I also want to see the Nokia presentation. Okay, there's questions coming in. Which kind of CSI do you use for your Kubernetes clusters? It's a bit of a mix. There is Ceph-Rook involved. There is NFS involved for the RWX storage, which is simply served by the NFS external sublayer provisioner. And there's also the VMware-based CSIs involved. Graag gedaan, Albert. And Aaron Horn asked, can you explain more about Equinix managed Kubernetes? Well, Equinix offers managed Kubernetes offerings. It's managed by Equinix Netherlands. We are currently rolling it out over different countries in Europe. We are doing deployments in the UK, Spain, and Finland as we speak. It's nothing like the public cloud. It's a bit different. I can tell a lot about it, but the best thing you can do if you want to read more about it, there's a website called docs.equinix.com. I will put it in the chat notes, which has product briefs, which should contain. Oh, it doesn't work. There's a website containing our product briefs. It's publicly accessible. It should contain a lot of information about our Kubernetes offering as well. But it's basically a hosted cluster. We provide a control plane, worker nodes. We do full lifecycle management. You are cluster admin, and you can do anything you want, basically. Robin, he's a colleague of mine. No, we don't do managed databases, and it's not our plan to do so. Equinix delivers infrastructure, and we. I used to say if it smells like an application, we don't do it. 10 years ago, that was a physical service, and anything in it is up to the customer. Later, that became virtual machines, but what's running inside it, it's up to the customer. Nowadays, we provide the Kubernetes infrastructure, but the workload, that's up to you. And the same goes for databases. We really don't have the skill set to operate databases on scale. It's very, very hard because it involves optimization of database issues as well. And that's not something we do or have our ambition. But there are a lot of people of our companies doing these kinds of things on our platform. I don't have any names ready, but there are a lot of, we power a lot of businesses who do these kinds of stuff on top of our platform. So that would be the official answer, I think. And I think I'm going to leave, unless there are any questions, because I want to see the Nokia slide deck as well. Thank you all for attending. It's my first time speaking on any conferences at all, and it was fun to do. So have a nice day all. Bye.